Hello and welcome back to the Dr. Leaf Show. I am so excited that you're here with me because we're talking about a topic today that is really, really important. Have you heard about love languages? I'm sure you have. All the love languages, those great things we use for connection. But have you heard about stress languages? Well, today I'm going to dive into the stress languages and how you can recognize that in yourself and how to manage that. Before we begin, I would love it if you would consider liking and subscribing to this podcast. By you helping me, I help so many more people. Now let's dive in. Are you ready? Right, stress languages. What are we talking about here? When we talk about stress languages, we're talking about those times when you don't feel connected, when you don't feel in control. Love languages is all nice stuff and it's all the way that we connect and communicate. But stress languages basically break us away from people. They disconnect us from people. And there's 5 different types based on research. And I'm going to talk through the different ones and give you some ideas and give you some understanding of these. And you can see where you may react. I've already worked mine out. I use a couple of them. But it's great to know them because if you know how you're reacting, if you know the language that you're speaking when you're in toxic stress, it's easier to recognize and manage the negative side of that, so that you don't make yourself feel disconnected. Remember, as humans, we are built for connection. We all know that. We need deep, meaningful connections. When we're in love languages, we're connecting. When we're in stress languages, we're disconnecting. So we need to know how we can use them in a way that we can reconnect. Before we dive into the different 5, I just want to talk a little bit about the neuroscience and psychoneurobiology of stress and how it works. Stress is good for you. It switches your brain into a high level of functioning because when you're in a positive stress state, your conscious mind is listening to the wisdom of your non-conscious, and your non-conscious is awake 24/7, drives you and has all your memories from your entire life and all your wisdom and everything you need. And so we need to connect with that wisdom. And when we are in positive stress, we automatically open the door to that wisdom. All our body and brain go into a high alert state driven by our mind, which is 99% of who we are. It means we think with more clarity, we have clearer thoughts. Because we're accessing wisdom, this means we're also more intuitive, so we'll pick up things, read between the lines, pick up when things aren't quite right. Sense that, that sixth sense that something's not quite, that something's going wrong, or you're just more tuned in. You have more cognitive flexibility, which means you have a possibilities mindset that you can shift. So if something changes or something's uncertain in your environment, and listen, life is full of uncertainty and things change all the time, but having cognitive flexibility enables you to deal with these changes and challenges. It also helps you tap into your endless intelligence. We are intelligent, but we often block our intelligence in toxic stress. In positive stress, we can actually access that intelligence, deep, wise intelligence that each of us have. We're also much more authentic when we're in stress. That's a funny one. We're much more authentic because we are much more ourselves when we're in a positive state of stress, because we aren't trying to please someone else. We aren't trying to do something for someone else to make us feel better. We're confident in who we are. Being in positive stress means we're confident in who we are. There's a fine line between healthy stress and toxic stress. Psychoneurobiology means mind-brain-body connection. In healthy stress, I have the right messages moving from my mind into my brain and body. I influence the hypothalamic pituitary axis, which runs from my brain to my kidneys. It enables the right kinds of hormones to flow in the right amounts. And those we know, cortisol and ACTH and various CRF, various different hormones that will flow in the right quantities. As they move back into your brain, the chemicals give a message to carry on secreting that amount or to reduce secreting that amount. So it's this whole mechanistic biochemical thing that happens, and it's all in balance. This comes from the mind generating healthy brain waves. It also means your immune system is doing what it's supposed to do, which is protect your body. It means your blood pressure is doing what it should, your heart's pumping correctly. Your body optimizes because you're in an optimized cognitive state or mental state. And why do you need to be like that? to solve the problem, to answer the question, to do what it is that you do in work. For me to sit in front of this camera and teach, I need to be in positive stress. So I think I've sold positive stress to you. I think you like positive stress. Okay. So toxic stress shifts the hypothalamic pituitary axis. What does that do to the amygdala? Let's talk about the amygdala and prefrontal cortex. The amygdala is in the middle of the brain. It is like a library. Now think of a library. It's got all kinds of books. And you also have books about your life. So those books are the memories that are in your clouds of your mind and trees and in your body. So this analogy of being like a library is it doesn't contain all the information of your memories because they couldn't fit there, but it contains the contents page of your memories with a brief abstract, if that makes sense. And there's all kinds of good and bad books. And the good books of your great memories, and books that are not so good are of toxic experiences, bad habits and traumas, stuff we haven't managed. So what happens is that when we're in good stress, that amygdala will function like it should do, and it will operate in the correct way. Why? Because your mind is sending it the right message to work correctly. When we get into toxic stress, where we start getting in our mind first, always mind first, panicky about something, or start seeing something that I can't do this, or they're going to say that again, or oh no, this is happening again. Even as you say it, you can see my body moved in a certain way. That thought generates disruptive energy through the brain and the body, takes that information and wires that into the brain and the body, and that then the brain and the body react, including the hypothalamic pituitary system, the amygdala, the prefrontal cortex, which is just above your eyes, and the prefrontal cortex. When you are making a decision, as you think, feel, and choose with your conscious mind, your prefrontal cortex gets very active. It's not that your prefrontal cortex chooses, it's that your prefrontal cortex responds to when you choose. When you are thinking clearly, you choose well, your prefrontal cortex operates well, the blood flows well, the oxygen and all that stuff does what it's supposed to do, and the brain functions like it should. Same thing with the amygdala. When you are making good choices about how you're going to react, which you'll do in good stress, then you're going to find that your amygdala will then pick the book off the shelf. Remember, the amygdala is like the library book that tells you, I'm okay, I can do this, I've done this before. This is a situation I can handle. Possibilities mindset, which is that there's many ways. If this doesn't work, I can do that. Failure is not the end of the world. I've learned what not to do. That's the healthy stress. But when I start shifting, the prefrontal cortex shuts down, doesn't get enough oxygen or blood flow. When that happens, it doesn't work properly. So now my mind's got to try and, make this work through something that's not working properly. That affects the brain waves. That then affects the amygdala structure. And then the amygdala, because it's not working properly, instead of getting the good books, gives you the bad books. Oh no, this is going to go wrong. This went wrong before. Look what happened. And that's going to happen. And that's going to happen. And that's going to happen. And the spiraling and all that kind of thing. So the mind makes the prefrontal cortex, and conscious mind can get messy if you don't listen to the tidy part and the unconscious mind. If you don't listen, it starts getting messy. We send energy into the brain, and the prefrontal cortex doesn't function well. It blocks oxygen and blood flow, and the hypothalamic pituitary axis, instead of getting a nice regular flow of chemicals, it gets disrupted, and it gets too many of one and too little of another, and that causes a problem with all the systems of your body. Okay, so that's what happens with toxic stress. What I want you to understand here very clearly is that stress is good for you, and that when you shift into toxic stress, you're shifting into toxic stress because of how you are thinking, feeling, and choosing with your mind. Okay, your reactions with your mind, how you think, feel, and choose. So it's not your amygdala that makes you go into toxic stress and operate in one of the stress languages. It's not your prefrontal cortex. It's not your hypothalamic pituitary axis. Those are three, I've just spoken about three, of parts of your brain and body that respond to what you're doing with your mind. And this is why it's important to understand stress languages. If you can recognize what your conscious mind is saying, and I'm going to explain this clearly now. It sounds like you've got a split personality. We do. We have multiple minds, and it's a good thing. If you know however each of them works, that'll help you. It's your mind that causes you to shift into stress and get toxic responses in the body. If you think it's your body making you do it or your brain making you do it, you don't feel like you've got power. So therefore, the stress languages, they're going to help you, but you're going to feel like they just something else I've got to memorize, and It's my brain that's put me there. Am I ever going to get out of the freeze language? Yes, you will. Of course you will. You're going to make it work for you and not against you when you understand it. It's your mind that's doing it. So you, with your mind's got different levels. Very quick explanation. I'm going to explain this in depth in my books. Your mind is the conscious level when you're awake. You have the non-conscious level, which operates 24/7. It's brilliant. It's fast. It never gets tired. It's full of wisdom. All your memories, good, bad, and ugly. And it is forever, it's on your side. It's forever looking at things that are disruptive and potentially going to put you into toxic stress. It puts those into your subconscious, which is slower. It's like a holding station, and your subconscious gets your conscious attention. So your conscious mind is only awake when you're awake. Non-conscious 24/7. Subconscious is awake when you're awake because the non-conscious is working with the subconscious to work with your conscious mind when you're awake. Okay, so now your conscious mind that only works when you're awake has got a messy part, and it's amazing. It's like a toddler. Think of how a toddler learns. They're exploring and excited, and one minute they're happy and the next minute crying. Part of growing and learning. We've got to have that part of us. It's like the little mini toddler scientist. Then there's that, and I say scientist because scientists are experimenting and hypothesizing and working things out and seeing it works and doesn't work. Then we've got a tidy part of the conscious mind to organize this exploring. We need both. But sometimes we switch the tidy part off and lose access to the wise non-conscious. The tidy part is the door opener to our wisdom, intuition, insight, intelligence, and cognitive flexibility, all the good stuff. When we recognize our stress languages, it's a way of recognizing that you've got stuck in toxic stress, that your mind, that you are consciously getting stuck in the messy part and not accessing enough of the tidy part. Having that awareness, you can recognize it and you can have a way of dealing with it. Okay, so now what I'm going to do for the rest of this podcast is go through the 5 stress languages, give explanations and a couple of tips to help you start making them work for you, not against you. The very first one is, and then these are not in any particular order, the first one is the fighter stress language. The fighter stress language. Now, what is that? That makes a statement to oneself of this kind of statement. If I push hard enough, I will stay in control. Okay? If I push hard enough, I will stay in control. That's the fighter stress language. It is the reaction that I must speak louder, I must speak faster, keep pushing, keep arguing, force my point of view. I'm not going to stop. I'm going to keep going until you concede. Pushing that aggressive language, it may not even be aggressive. It may be that someone just has the gift of the gab and they are able to use words in such a way that you feel manipulated, like a narcissist. This is very much one of these sorts of responses. And there's this manipulation that's happening, but it's sometimes not even intentional. All the stress languages are coping mechanisms. When you go into the conscious, messy part of your mind without the tidy part, which has access to the wisdom of the non-conscious, you are going to just try and cope and compensate. You're not going to solve. So you move into compensatory mode, and that is fine for the moment, but it's not fine long term because you're going to build patterns that disrupt your mental health and your physical health, because your mental health determines your physical health. Okay, so the fighter mode, they react fast and sharp. Okay, so it's if something happens, they immediately go into toxic stress. They're going to be loud, aggressive, pushy, etc., and fast reactions, sharp reactions, kind of surprising. It can be a little overwhelming to be on the receiving end of that. It can make you feel, what have I done? And almost make you feel bad if you're on the receiving end. They struggle to feel safe unless they feel in control. So they push and fight to get control. It's not that they are trying to fight with you, they're fighting with themselves. You just happen to be in front of them and said something that's triggered their feeling. They're fighting to get control and using aggression to do that. It's an angry reaction, and that anger is from fear, not confidence. Okay? So some anger that's justifiable anger comes from a confidence that something's wrong. So good anger is you're very confident that is such a bad thing that's happening. This stress language, this is hiding fear. There's a deep-seated fear that needs attention. You need to take the time to do the Neurocycle, which is the formula that I've developed, and you can learn about this in my books, in my new book, Help in a Hurry. I'll give you quick ways of using the Neurocycle. It's a formula for how you can get the messy part of your conscious mind to talk to the tidy part, and via that to the wisdom of your unconscious. It's hiding that fear, and you need to get to the root of that fear. Until you address that root, which is fear-based, if fear is attached to details. Fear is the signal, but what's the thought behind that fear? What made you feel that fear in the first place? Until you've identified that and deconstructed and reconstructed. In other words, you're going to have to embrace the fear, process the fear, reconceptualize the thought that the fear is based upon. Until you do that, you're going to find you're going to get stuck in this angry response that is fear-based, not confidence-based. It's masking vulnerability. Because when you feel fear, you feel vulnerable. Fear makes you feel vulnerable. So you go into this hyper-arousal state, body movement and pushing. People are saying, can you just stop? Can we just leave this alone? No. You've got to get your point through. That is a hyper-arousal from fear, trying to get control back. Anger can feel safer than fear. The more angry you're getting, it's hiding that fear. Fear is very scary because it makes you feel vulnerable. We hate feeling vulnerable. Conflict feels better than silence. So, because it creates conflict, this kind of fighting response, this kind of fighting language will create conflict. And it feels more comfortable. Even if you don't like the conflict, it's more comfortable than sitting with yourself in silence and working it out. Anger is actually masking fear, because fear makes you feel vulnerable. And when you feel vulnerable in the fighting toxic language, you are going to fight to get control of the fear. And that's why the only way to deal with it is to find the source of the fear. And then you deconstruct and reconstruct, as I mentioned, okay? So the key kind of traits of this is it's quick to anger, very controlling, uses force with words. It's a lot of words that come out, a lot of like words that you talk that can talk you in circles. Persistently pushing their point of view, getting louder, repeating the same thing over and over, and all of it's to regain a feeling of safety. But it's toxic, and it's put your hypothalamic pituitary axis into hyperarousal. You've messed up, the chemicals are imbalanced, the prefrontal cortex is like starving for oxygen and blood, your amygdala is throwing every bad library book out, it's a big mess, and you feel awful, and the people around you feel awful. There's a lot of research supporting this. There's research out of Harvard and Stanford showing the impact of the fight language response. For example, the study out of Harvard talks about stress suppresses prefrontal regulation, making reactive behaviors like anger or outbursts more likely. Basically, the more you do this, the more you wire this response, the network between the mind, brain, and body, stronger and stronger. Whatever stronger is going to drive you, because your thoughts that have turned into strong habits, that's what drives you, okay? So the thing is, you need to find that root cause. You need to find that source of what the fear is attached to. So fear underlies it, fear, vulnerability. There's a paradox because you know you're doing it. And then you feel too much. And that makes you feel even more fearful, so you do it more. Do what you shouldn't be doing, then you do it more. If that's one of your responses, you've got to start helping yourself to be able to tell yourself that, you're not too much. You've got to start believing it, because you think you're too much, so you become too much. But if you start thinking you are enough, you're not too much, that can tone that down. You have practiced a response, the reaction. You've practiced a way of functioning that is a reaction to an underlying thought pattern and experience that's created fear. The only way is to face that and to deal with that. Now, there's different things that you can do. You're going to have to train yourself, and it's going to take you at least 63 days to do that. You're not going to do this overnight. It's going to take you at least 63 days, because that's the time it takes to rewire this kind of fighting language, to turn the fight stress language into a healthy stress language. So when you feel that fighting coming on, you have the antidote. Instead of speaking more and getting angry, if you've found the source of the fear and the vulnerability, instead of that persistent, loud, angry response, it will become a nice, firm, confident response. So it flips from fear to confidence. But you've got to find the source to flip the fear into confidence. And that's key with this. Last thing I want to say about this is I'm stressing that you have to find, you have to take the time to create the antidote. And that's going to be to find the source. But in the moment, as you catch yourself doing it, you can do some help in a hurry things. And when I say help in a hurry, this is my new book that's coming out on the 5th of August. And if you pre-order, there's amazing bonuses. But this helps you, it's full of techniques to help you in that moment of anger, the fighting fear language. So I also have help in a hurry to help you in a hurry respond in the best way possible to the toxic version of your stress language. Techniques to use in the moment to catch it. If you catch it in 63 seconds, you can rewire the pattern over 63 days. The next stress language is the freezer stress language. We've done the fighter stress language, now we're doing the freezer stress language. Everything feels too much, so I'm just going to freeze. Shut down like an ice block. You train yourself to be emotionally numb. Sidebar, as humans, emotions you can never really suppress, but you can train yourself to numb them. You create networks in your psychoneurobiology that numb your emotions, and that's not a good thing because you will not grow, you will not heal, and you will stay in toxic stress, and it will, like a virus, spread through your entire life. And it's all these languages, when they're in their toxic state, they have a viral impact throughout your mind-brain-body network. So it's worth recognizing so you can do something about them. It's the emotionally blank, mentally blank reaction. It looks like, oh wow, they're just so calm. They haven't moved. They haven't blinked. They're just not even reacting. Absolutely still. It doesn't mean that everyone who reacts totally still. Sometimes people are just still because that's how they process, okay? If it's, then they're in the good version of that stress language. They're not in the toxic stress version. They disconnect, and that's the key. That's where the toxicity comes through. The numbing, freezing, pushing down emotions. You can see it in people's eyes. Their eyes look empty, and there's a disconnect. You just can't get in their zone. I've spoken about our mind zone all around us. Our mind, not a minefield, as in those things that blow you up. Mind field that's all around you where thoughts are processed. And that's 99% of who you are. We want to use that. So we have this mind field around us. We can cut off access to that with our mind. So we get stuck in that messy part and we don't look any further. We can literally switch down our functioning and disconnect. And it takes practice. But it's, as I said in the beginning, all of these stress languages, when they're used in a toxic way, we are speaking a language of compensation, trying to cope with something that's happened. And that's why the main work is to find the source. Okay? So but this one manifests as being emotionally numb, mentally blank, that's dead look in your eyes, appearing calm but disconnected. That feeling of, I just can't get in your space. I can't see you. It's like I'm talking to a blank wall. It takes a lot of practice to get into this state. It's a disconnection from others and self. If you practice that long enough, it can become a problem because it can be a way, when things get too much, very often we see people that have gone through extreme states and they'll go from fighter to this freezer and they disconnect from themselves. And that's not healthy because you can't do anything in that zone. It feels like you're protecting, but it's not. It may have worked in a moment. If you use it now and then to get through a moment, it's fine, but if it's a pattern that disconnects you, it creates problems with your mental health, and it will create a lot of problems with others. That'll create a lot of depression and anxiety. The anxiety that manifests is because you're not allowing you to be you. You pushed everything down, and that's totally goes against the grain of who you are and how you function. So it doesn't protect you, but it is a response that people will turn to if they feel that what they're going through or the world around them or life is unmanageable. So if it's happening then, you know what, you can recognize it, you can do something. But if it's a regular pattern and it's expanding and you're using it a lot daily, which we see with people that really get stuck in mental health problems, especially addictions, then that really does need support. Okay, so the key traits of the freezer is emotionally shut down, numb, disassociated with others and with the self. There's a lot of research to support this. Now, key thing here is when you switch off to the world, you're not being lazy, because sometimes people will say, hey, just get up, just move. You disconnected to protect, but it's not healthy. You're freezing out the world and yourself. The first step is to notice that you've gone still. I use the example of a submarine. If you think of a submarine goes underwater, but then eventually it has to come up and let the people out because there's a limited amount of oxygen and so on that You can't just have a submarine underwater forever. And this is kind of what the freezer does, is they're going underground, inside, into like a submarine state, or even in a cocoon state is maybe another example. But you've got eventually, the moth eventually comes out the cocoon, the submarine eventually has to come up. So the big thing here, where the fight response, you're looking to find the root. The root is fear linked to vulnerability. This, you're looking for what has made life so unmanageable that you literally want to disassociate from the world and from yourself. All of these are on a spectrum where it's done a little bit and then it's not going to be too disruptive. But as soon as it gets more than a little bit and these become patterns, it can become very, very disruptive to your mental health. The third stress language is the fixer. This is the, I don't feel safe unless I've fixed it. This is the person who is in the situation and they start shifting into toxic stress by thinking, okay, I'm going to fix this. I'm going to find a solution. I'm going to fix this person, this situation, this relationship, this business problem. I'm going to make these two fix their relationship. I'm going to make them make the right choices. It's exhausting, but it's a way of keeping busy to avoid the core issue. Everything we do comes from our thoughts. If our thoughts are toxic, they manifest in different ways. These stress languages are a compilation of ways that we cluster behavior patterns into. And so understanding the stress languages can help us then break down our responses to life. What the fixer is trying to do is get certainty into their life. They don't want uncertainty. They want certainty. They're not comfortable with uncertainty. Yet pretty much all of life's uncertain. So one of the key things with the fixer is they're going to have to learn to be comfortable with the uncomfortable uncertainty. Uncertainty makes you feel discomforted, and the fixer really can't handle it. So they'll do everything to try and fix it. Everyone gets resentful, keeping very busy, trying to do all these things to make it better and make people better. And then people start getting irritated because I've got this solution, I've got that solution. We over-involve ourselves in trying to help people fix things. Just as well I have this podcast because I can send all this stuff out to you without being interrupted and help fix myself while I'm fixing you. That was a joke, guys. Some of the key traits, they overgive. Okay, you overgive time mainly, overgive advice, overgive solutions. People are saying, okay, enough, just listen, don't tell me what to do. Those are the reactions you'll get. Trying to solve compulsively. Everything's a problem. I have to find a solution. I can't let this go until it's fixed. The purpose is to distract from inner pain, because trying to complete things has created a lot of inner pain, and you're trying to get rid of that inner pain. So you think fixing is going to get rid of the inner pain. You have to find the source of why you need a fix. What's the toxic thought? You have to do that 63-day neurocycle. Okay, so lots of research to back this up as well. If you have this attitude of something always needs to be fixed, you're never going to ever feel certain about anything, because you actually really cannot fix everything. So a huge part is just accepting, you know what, I can try, I can do it to a certain extent, because a little bit of support and advice and good balance, a little bit of people pleasing in the right scenario, those can be helpful, but it's to know when to not get obsessive and compulsive about it, to know when to stop. Then it can work for you and not against you. In order to deal with this, you're going to have to find the root cause that is creating this way that you are manifesting in this over-fixing of everything. So a quick thing that you can do if you find yourself in a moment of over-fixing and you catch yourself, you self-regulate. As you start doing that, this is such a lovely, simple technique, is read fiction. Always have a good book with you. So let's say that you find yourself in a moment where you just want to go and dive into that stress language 100% and start fixing, and you catch yourself, doing the fixing and kind of irritating people. Read fiction. Why? You see other people's lives, their stories, and you see how they get through things. And as a fixer, that'll appeal to you because you're seeing people go from the beginning to the end. So you're kind of seeing the whole scenario of the problem to the solution. And that'll satisfy your need to fix things. You can relate to it. Even if you take forever to read it, find something. If you don't like reading, find something. Especially if you're a fixer, you should read anyway, because fiction is phenomenal for your brain. Reading fiction teaches you about yourself, because the things that you are drawn to read and the characters and the stories, it's telling you something about yourself. Not necessarily that you're going through that situation, but it will help to point to potentially why you feel you need to fix things all the time. Now let's talk about the fourth stress language. This fourth stress language is the fleer running away, disappear, avoid those hard conversations. Just pretend they didn't happen. Ostrich in the sand mentality. I'm not going to deal with this. I'm never going to deal with this. Run away, avoid. And these things, once again, are compensation in the moment. And if you use them as a distraction in the moment, that's fine. But if they're a pattern in your life, they're going to go from good stress to toxic stress. With the fleer, distance feels like safety. Now think of my kids in all of these. I can pinpoint myself, my husband, my kids. My youngest is definitely the fighter. I'm the fixer. My son, for example, is definitely the fleer. When things get too much, he'll pull away, put up big boundaries, avoid hard conversations, avoid texting, and be distant. And that's how he copes. Now he's learned to balance that with kindness and compassion. When he was younger, it felt like he was just pulling away. And it could be hurtful. You can hurt the other person or ourselves and other people. But the thing is, what you resist will persist. You can't avoid these things. You eventually have to do them because they're not going anywhere. And even though you know it, you can practice being a fleer. So as soon as things get hard, you run. But it leaves all this unfinished business. It's these toxic things that are just fired up and fired up. For those listening, I'm holding up my toxic tree, which represents the thought network in the brain, in the mind, and an ugly broken hedge in the body. But if you activate this situation and then you don't close it, you don't get finality around it. It's like a door of monsters that you've opened or something, or a door of toxic energy. And eventually it catches up with you and drains your energy, and it can make you really exhausted. So it's very important that when all of these can drain your energy and make you exhausted, that you get closure. We all need closure. So the fighter, for example, will push till they get closure, but they do it in a way that's all fear-driven, so it comes out wrong. The fixer tries to fix. So the fleer is trying to get closure by flying away. But we have to go to the core of our being to really deal with this. What's the original thought? Not the thoughts you're fleeing from. What made you flee in the first place? Deconstruct and reconstruct. And that will take 63 days. If you know the language, you know the direction to go in. A couple more things about the fleer. They'll avoid confrontation. They'll just walk out, stop texting, put down the phone, not come around. That kind of thing, to avoid the confrontation, or change topic. If you're at a dinner party and something's happening, change topic or whatever, that kind of thing. Keeping the peace can be very good. If things are getting heated, they tend to withdraw, escape mentally or physically. There's a lot of mental escape with the fleer, often to video games and fantasy worlds. It's really escaping anything that takes you away from the current situation. Now, I want to stress here that a little bit of video games, a little bit of reading fiction to take you into a fantasy world, a little bit of imagination, those are amazing. You can do a lot of them. But if you're using those to not deal with something, you're using them wrong. Okay? So if they're used quick and short to just catch your breath, help in a hurry, fantastic. But if you do them as a pattern, it can become very disruptive to you and your mental and physical health. It messes up your psychoneurobiology. In Help in a Hurry, my book coming out on August 5th, I have techniques to help you in the moment. If you can control the 63 seconds, you can control the rest of your life, literally. When you learn to self-regulate the moment, you can self-regulate all kinds of things. So in 60 seconds, I can actually learn to start controlling whatever my stress language is when it becomes toxic, and make it work for me. And so a quick technique to just in the moment, if you find yourself wanting to flee, is you can cast your mind back and grab the memory, the thought with the memories where you did have a successful resolution of a conflict. So it's really important that you find those, and maybe in advance, before something happens, if you identify as a fleer, take a little bit of time to think of a conflict, a situation where there was a problem in a relationship or something, work, whatever, and just go and write down, maybe in the notes of your phone or something, about how that started and how it ended and how it was resolved and how you were successful. When you remind yourself, you want to reactivate it, pull it out of your non-conscious, and then hang on to that. So when you're in that moment where you want to flee and avoid, you could just take a deep breath in, breathe out, and recall that successful interaction. That combination will change your neurophysiology in the moment and help you get to that next moment, and act as a reminder that you need to spend some time rewiring that habit. Okay, let's look at number 5. The 5th stress language is the suppressor. The suppressor just shoves it down. They are the master at, oops, I don't like this. See the toxic thought? For those of you listening, I'm holding up this toxic, ugly looking tree and I'm pushing it underneath the table to represent suppression. When we suppress, it does not go away. In fact, what we know from neuroscience is that when we suppress something, it actually gets stronger, which is why the non-conscious mind searches to find these and pushes them up into your subconscious, which is like a holding waiting room type place. And then this sends signals to your conscious mind to pay attention and sort it out. What can happen very often is we can be in a situation and then it triggers another toxic thought, not necessarily this response, but it triggers another type of toxic thought, which is the origin of why you suppress in the first place. So something has happened, or a series of things has happened, experiences that were wired into your mind, then brain and body, and that got very strong and were never dealt with in any toxic situation. Then that gets triggered, this suppression language that says, oh, when I feel like this, I'm just going to do this. Unfortunately, it goes back stronger than before. And eventually it will explode in your physical and mental health, because 35 to 75% of lifestyle diseases come from our thought life. Suppression is dangerous. It eventually can lead to things like Alzheimer's and damage of frontal lobe dementias, Parkinson's. I'm not saying that every suppressed thought causes that. It's cumulative over time. But when we constantly suppress, we create a whole mess in our biochemistry, in our neural networks, and those get inflamed, and then the inflammation increases. It affects our immune system of the brain and the body, and that whole cycle starts literally damaging networks. And networks that are damaged means that I can't function properly. And it starts affecting, and your mind has to work through your brain and body. This is the source of how the mind expresses itself. So if the brain and body are starting to get disrupted, and from things like suppression, all of these 5 languages, if they're not dealt with, are going to create the similar sort of pattern that I'm describing now. Suppression does it fast. When we have those reactions over time, our brain and our body becomes battered by our mind, and then it starts playing out in cognitive problems and memory problems and heart problems. So it's worth listening to yourself, learning to self-regulate, and just having these 5 languages, these stress languages, is a tool in your toolbox to learn to start self-regulating. It's so nice when we react in a certain way that we can actually say, oopsie, yep, I'm in my stress language and this is going to do this and this and this to me, and I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do this in 60 seconds, find your technique and help in a hurry, and then take the time to do a neurocycle. Keeping it is not good for you. Don't think it's going to go away. I'm trying to give you tools to help you learn to self-regulate, that you live a peaceful, long, and happy life. So I hope this has helped you. Oh, and I'm going to tell you about a 6th one. It's the pleaser stress language. And here I realized I said at the beginning that there's 5 stress languages. I've done this research. There's 6 stress languages. Now I'm having a stress reaction. I'm going into my stress language, my other one. I like to fix and I like to please. The pleaser is going to over-apologize. I already did it to my producer. I said, I'm so sorry. I missed that one. I must have deleted it and didn't print that page out when I was preparing. I thought something was missing. Why am I saying 5 at the back of my mind? If I'd listened to my wisdom and unconscious, I would have self-corrected earlier. But I'm happy I didn't. Why? Because now I can tell you about the pleaser stress language, which I'm in right now, but I'm controlling it. I know it's coming from, oh, I got to look perfect on camera. No, I don't have to look perfect. I can mess up. It's okay to not be okay. It's okay to mess up. So I've handled my pleaser stress language, which would have, oh, this is terrible, over-apologize, let's refilm this whole thing. My producer said, no, you're not refilming, just own it. So I'm owning it. Thank you, producer. This is a great example. So let's see, the pleaser. If I make everyone happy, maybe I'll be okay. So I've done the work and I need to do it more because I got out of this very quickly. So I kind of have done the work, but I need to do a little bit more of why do I feel the need to constantly over-apologize? Why do I need everyone in the room to like me? Some of you are going to hate what I've got to say. I don't have to please all of you. I just have to deliver my message to you, and if you like it or not, I don't have to worry about that. But the pleaser says, oh, I've got to please everyone. I've got to make this podcast perfect. Shape shift to suit the room. Can't be me. I look perfect. I've got to have this perfect. Why didn't I? And it leads to regret, and it leads to that language, like all of them, can be destructive. Look how I've grown. I could never have done this a few years ago. A few years ago, I would have insisted that we stopped and refilmed this entire podcast. And I would have lost the flow. So I'm happy that happened, and I can show you the pleaser. The pleaser shapeshifts, over-apologizes, is so busy tuning into others that they don't tune into themselves. They're so busy worrying about what did the room think, I can give you another example. I did a whole tour last week giving a lecture in New York, and it was hot. We had to walk 5 minutes, and it was raining and humid, and my hair looked perfect before the rain. I got out of the rain, and I kind of fixed my hair and got on the stage and did this whole talk. And they had this photographer that was taking photographs of me from the floor, taking photos. So first of all, I looked like a giant, and I'm not a giant. And secondly, they took one from behind, and I had this big mass of matted hair. You couldn't see it from the front, but the humidity in my hair is naturally curly. I was so busy worrying about that when I saw the photographs. I didn't even concentrate on the fact that people were absolutely stunned by what I said, that were literally crying, that couldn't get to the book table. I was so busy trying to please everyone. It affected how I was speaking. I got myself under control, finished the lecture, ignored it. When I saw the photographs, my stress language jumped out. Knowing what was going on, I didn't beat myself up. The whole message of Help in a Hurry is it's okay to not be okay. What are you going to do about it? Here you have the stress languages. Which one do you relate to? They're not mutually exclusive. Maybe there's all of them that you relate to. I've given you a way of understanding 6, not 5 stress languages. Find them, see which ones you relate to the most, and start working on self-regulating them using some of the techniques I have shared. If you've liked this and this has helped you, please share this. We all need this help. Looking forward to seeing you next time. Thank you for joining me.